Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Splatoon Raiders on the Nintendo Switch 2. This review was originally written by me, because I've reviewed all the previous Splatoon games, and I wasn't about to let that change. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Whilst it wasn't part of the original release 11 years ago, yikes, Salmon Run has become a core part of the Splatoon experience, as important as turf wars and bizarre single-player adventures. Splatoon Raiders is Salmon Run to an extent, but it feels to me more like a side mode from a potential Splatoon 4 that's simply gone out of hand. If you're unfamiliar with the general idea, Salmon Run is a mode where instead of fighting fellow Inklings and Octolings, you take on large and small and physically varied enemies called Salmonids, a naming convention so outlandish, so dangerous, so damnably curious that it's impossible to know precisely on what animal they're based. Unlike the typical arena-based structure of normal Salmon Run, Raiders uses a stage system more typically associated with Splatoon's other single-player offerings, referred to as dungeons. Each dungeon broadly falls into one of a few categories. You've got your standard get-to-the-end kind, more non-linear environs that task you with collecting a set number of power eggs from fallen Salmonids, claustrophobic arenas that spawn enemies relentlessly, and mini-gauntlets that teach you how to use the game's various gadgets. More on those later. A lot of dungeons don't fit super neatly into these categories though, which I found a really nice way to play with expectations. Splatoon's done this for a while of course, but I was very pleased to see it maintained in this spin-off. The biggest change over previous games however is the Salmonids themselves. Every boss Salmonid and every lesser Salmonid from previous games make a return, with the exception of the Snatcher as they just wouldn't work with Raiders' new gameplay, but also new enemy types for both categories make their debut here. Smokers will provide a protective gaseous bubble that reduces damage dealt to any Salmonids within range, Salty Tongues will waddle over and try to nip at your entire being, and Salivators will lob horrible plastic bags full of gunk at you that throw out a vortex of pain and suffering. All good stuff, but the real intrigue for me as a long-time player was how they've adjusted the existing boss Salmonids. You see, the gadget system replaces the sub-weapon system of previous games, meaning there's no guarantee you'll have splat bombs at your disposal. This means that Moors and Flyfish can now be taken down with standard shots. Although that was admittedly always the case with the former, you'd just be a fool to rely on that. At first, I felt this was a tiny bit disappointing as it took away some of their uniqueness. Big shots are also properly mobile now, bouncing around on large springs rather than sticking to the shoals. This disappointment held up until I reached some of the harder dungeons where these revised enemies were no longer just being introduced, but being actively and viciously employed. It is indeed easier to take down the absolute hellspawn that is the Flyfish by just shooting the pilot as opposed to throwing a bomb in each bin, but that does not stop it from being an absolute pain in my life when it launches its little piddly missiles when I'm trying to focus on another 30 more immediate enemies charging towards me. But it's the new salt-encrusted seasoned Salmonids that really take the proverbial biscuit, along with award for best pun in a game full of puns. They truly are the Dark Souls of Salmonids, exaggerating their existing traits to the nth degree and in a manner that I absolutely love. The Big Stack Stinger is at least 3 times as tall as a standard Stinger and has 3 guns, and the Longline Steel Eel is a ruthless brute that makes me want to cry. It's also really long. I should probably say that at this point, I played through the whole game, completed it mate, on the hardest difficulty available, Survivalist. There are 2 other difficulties available for less try-hard overachievers, and the game does a really good job of balancing things to make everything fun and achievable no matter your skill set. If things are too tricky, you can always replay previous dungeons in order to boost up your level and increase your stats, which means that whilst it is possible to overlevel yourself, it's still a very welcome method of making sure the game doesn't alienate new players. You can even call on other players online to come and help you for a single raid if it helps you make the progress you need. Replaying levels does sound a little bit dull though, doesn't it? Well, fear not. After clearing enough stages, you'll unlock the ability to replay your previously completed levels in spicy mode. This ramps up the difficulty enormously, meaning not only is it more fun replaying previous levels you've already smashed out of the park, but you'll also get different rewards as a result. New enemy placements, more enemies, more variety in enemies. Spicy raids are just one way Splatoon Raiders makes replaying endlessly enjoyable. And if you're a serious glutton for punishment like I am, then do not worry, there are plenty of ways the game hands your various body parts back to you. I'm not going to go into details, but let's just say if you're a hardcore fan of Splatoon, you'll have so much to sink your teeth into as things progress. And frankly, that's the same no matter your skill set. Although you might not think it given its budget price point, there's a hell of a lot of game in here. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics to make sure things stay fresh for when you get the game for yourself. But enough of that long ramble about the game as a whole. I did promise I'd talk about the new gadget system, didn't I? Well, as I said, they replace sub-weapons, you know, bombs, sprinklers, all that sort of stuff, and are absolutely essential to master and upgrade if you want to punch the biggest holes in the biggest salmonids. Each plays quite differently, and they're tied to specific ink tank types, meaning you can't use any combination you like willy-nilly. Some of them are definitely more my cup of tea than others, to the point that I really wouldn't mind some of them making their way to Splatoon 4, albeit probably with a bit of tweaking to make them a little bit less overpowered, because you see, you can upgrade these gadgets to such an extent that they would absolutely break any normal game of Splatoon. A personal favorite of mine is the splatter lights, which spawn a rotating array of globules that spread ink and damage enemies at first, but with the right gadget parts can be upgraded to hit flying enemies, set salmonids on fire, or even stay in place if you wish. The amount of customization in how you play the game is nothing short of staggering, to the point that I doubt you're likely to bump into anyone in real life that would have had the same experience as you with the game. Just to be sure though, you could always play the whole game online with a friend or three. Yep, despite being a single-player game first and foremost, you can play almost every single level in multiplayer, and the way they've implemented this is simple but so good. You can't select a dungeon if someone within the party hasn't unlocked it, but when you do complete a level, it counts as progress for everyone involved. That means that in theory, you could play through all but the entirety of the game with friends, should you wish. And don't worry about making things too easy either. Multiplayer ramps up the levels of the enemy salmonids, but in a delightful twist, each player's individual difficulty choice is maintained on a player-by-player basis, meaning newbies and seasoned experts don't have to sacrifice their personal difficulty choices to play with their chums. How nice is that? But you won't be alone even in single player, as you'll have one of Deep Cup piloting a small walker tank to help you out. They'll shoot, provide you with the ability to use a unique special move, and most importantly, let you bounce up into the air to gain a height advantage on those pesky salmonids. A feature I genuinely didn't think I'd use much, but have since absolutely abused in my time playing. Everything about the gameplay is excellent, although truth be told, whilst there is plenty of new stuff to enjoy, it's not really pushing the boundaries of the series in any substantial way. Jumping into things for the first time felt immediately familiar, and although there are fun twists and turns to enjoy, the core gameplay is broadly what you would expect from Splatoon. It's evolutionary, not revolutionary in that sense. The game looks pretty good on Switch 2 as well. It's not strictly a showcase for some of the new tech that the system is capable of, but it'd be rude not to call it a looker at the same time. Graphics are crisp in docked mode, looking to my eye like a very solid 1440p, with a rare instance of anti-aliasing for a Nintendo game, and a pin-sharp 1080p in handheld. It doesn't use any especially novel lighting for the most part, possibly to keep the chaos as easy to pass as it can be, but it does manage to look pretty flipping tasty without dropping from its 60 FPS target. If it was ever dropping frames at any point, I could not see it with my pedantic little eyes. The music is spectacular, and I'd expect nothing less, to be honest, and whilst the story isn't pushing any boundaries, it's a fun little narrative that gives us a bit more insight into Shiver, Fry and Big Man that fans won't have seen before. But you know what warms my heart the most? It's the little things. It's always the little things. Practically all salmonids, even lessers, change their look depending on their effective level, becoming more and more encrusted with salt. The victory theme at the end of each raid changes depending on your bot buddy, or indeed if you're playing multiplayer, reflecting each member of Deep Cut's individual singing and musical style. The explosive Sparkies may somehow have the Doppler effect programmed into their sirens. I can't confirm this to be sure, I just know a one point it sounded like they sounded different when they were coming towards me, as opposed to when I was running away from them. And if that's actually the case, that's ludicrous. Splatoon Raiders may be missing the series' iconic turf war, but what we have here is possibly the most variable and exciting game the series has ever offered. Regardless of your skill level or personal playstyles, the game is able to cater to practically any taste, and all whilst delivering one of the most enjoyable gameplay loops on the console. It looks good, runs fantastically, and you can play practically the whole thing with friends if you wish. Not only that, but Nintendo's flogging it for a bargain price. Whilst it may not push any serious boundaries within the genre, it's difficult to find anything negative to say about it. It really is a must-play for almost anyone. Splatoon Raiders, you're getting a 9 out of 10 from us.